Ethan Brooks never imagined that at 35 his world would be measured in lunchboxes, bedtime stories, and the fragile heartbeat of a 6-year-old girl. But that was his life now, small, tender, and quietly heroic. Every morning before the sun rose over their modest Brooklyn apartment, Ethan would slip out of bed and make breakfast for his daughter Mia. Pancakes if there was time, toast and peanut butter when there wasn't. He always tried to make it feel special, even when exhaustion clung to him like a shadow. Mia would sit at the tiny kitchen table in her pink pajamas, her hair sticking up in a dozen directions, watching him with those wide, trusting eyes. "You're my favorite chef in the whole world," she would say, and Ethan would smile, even though his heart still ached at the space beside him where her mother used to sit. 2 years ago, cancer had taken Emily, his wife, fast, ruthless. It left Ethan holding a sobbing toddler in a hospital hallway, wondering how life could keep going when everything inside him had just shattered. Since then, every decision he made was filtered through one simple, powerful question. What's best for Mia? That question followed him everywhere. Into the grocery store, onto the subway, and especially into his office. Ethan worked as a senior marketing analyst at Hale Dynamics, one of Manhattan's most aggressive, high-profile media firms. He was good at his job, quietly brilliant, the kind of man who didn't talk much in meetings, but always seemed to have the smartest ideas when it counted. But talent alone didn't pay for piano lessons, health insurance, or the better elementary school Mia dreamed of attending. That's why when Victoria Hale called his name during Monday's team meeting, Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "Ethan Brooks," she said, her sharp voice cutting through the room. "You're coming with me to Chicago." Every head turned. Victoria Hale was not just his boss. She was a legend, the youngest CEO in the company's history. Razor smart, fiercely demanding, and famously untouchable. She wore success like armor, tailored suits, flawless makeup, and eyes that could slice through excuses in seconds. The Chicago presentation was huge, a national client, a potential multi-million-dollar contract. Whoever went with her was getting noticed. "This campaign needs vision," Victoria continued, "and Brooks has it." There was no debate, no discussion, just decision. Ethan nodded, even though his first thought wasn't excitement. It was Mia. That night, he knelt beside her bed as she hugged her worn-out stuffed rabbit, Mr. Buttons. "Do you have to go?" she asked softly, her voice trembling in that way that always broke him. "Just a couple of days, sweetheart," he said gently. "Mrs. Thompson will stay with you. And when I come back, we'll do Pancake Saturday, okay?" She sniffled. "With chocolate chips?" "With extra chocolate chips," he promised, crossing his heart. Still, as he zipped his suitcase, guilt pressed down on him. Mia had already lost her mother. He hated the idea of leaving her, even for work. But this trip could change everything. Better pay, better hours, a safer future. It was a risk he had to take. Victoria, meanwhile, watched Ethan from the corner of her office as he finalized his travel plans. She told herself she had chosen him because he was competent, reliable, creative. But there was more to it. Ethan didn't look at her the way others did. Not with fear, or ambition, or hunger for approval. He just looked at her as a person, and that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Victoria Hale had built her entire life on control. Her father, a ruthless corporate lawyer, had drilled one lesson into her from childhood. Feelings make you weak. So she buried her childhood dreams of becoming a pastry chef, of opening a small bakery filled with warm light and laughter, and replaced them with spreadsheets, contracts, and boardrooms. Success was safer than hope. Yet somehow, when she watched Ethan tuck his phone into his pocket and smile at a photo of his daughter, she felt something unfamiliar stir inside her chest. Envy, curiosity, longing. She pushed it away. Chicago was about business, nothing more. The plane lifted into the gray morning sky, carrying two very different people toward the same uncertain future. Ethan sat by the window, staring out at the clouds, his thoughts tangled between quarterly projections and Mia's missing tooth smile. Victoria sat beside him, reviewing her slides, her posture crisp and confident. Neither of them knew it yet, but this trip wasn't just about a contract. It was about to change both of their lives in ways no spreadsheet could ever predict. And somewhere back in Brooklyn, a little girl named Mia was counting down the hours until her daddy came home, unaware that fate was quietly rearranging everything. The storm rolled into Chicago like it had something personal to prove. By the time Ethan and Victoria reached the airport, Thick gray clouds had swallowed the skyline. Flights were blinking red across the departure board, one after another. Delayed. Canceled. Delayed again. Ethan felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. A message from Mrs. Thompson. Mia's asking when you'll be home. She's okay. Just missing you. His chest tightened. He typed back quickly, forcing a reassuring tone. Tell her daddy's coming as soon as the sky lets him. Victoria noticed the way his shoulders stiffened. No luck? She asked, her voice softer than it ever was in the boardroom. Not yet, Ethan replied. Storm grounded everything. They ended up in a downtown hotel, one of the last places with a vacancy thanks to a massive tech conference that had flooded the city with stranded travelers. The young clerk slid a single key card across the counter with an apologetic smile. I'm really sorry, but we only have one room left. Ethan froze. Victoria didn't blink. We'll take it. He turned to her, stunned. Victoria, It's one night, she said, calm and pragmatic. We're both adults, Ethan. We'll manage. The elevator ride to the 7th floor was thick with awkward silence. The soft jazz playing through the speakers did nothing to ease the tension. Ethan stared at the glowing numbers above the door, counting them like a nervous tick. Inside the room, the truth hit them both at once. One king-size bed. Ethan swallowed hard. I can sleep on the chair or the floor. I don't mind. Victoria kicked off her heels and dropped her bag on the luggage rack. Don't be ridiculous. That bed could fit 3 people. We'll stay on our own sides. She headed toward the bathroom. I'm taking a shower. Order something if you're hungry. Company card. As the door closed behind her, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his phone in his hands. A new picture had come in from Mrs. Thompson, Mia with ice cream all over her face, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. He smiled despite the knot in his chest. When Victoria came back out, she was in silk pajamas, her hair loose, her face free of makeup. Without the armor of her usual polished look, she seemed different, younger, more human. Your turn, she said. The hot shower washed away some of Ethan's tension, but not his thoughts. By the time he stepped out in a t-shirt and sweatpants, Victoria was sitting on the bed with her laptop, glasses perched on her nose. You wear glasses? He blurted before he could stop himself. She touched them self-consciously. Only when my contacts bother me. Don't tell anyone. It would ruin my terrifying reputation. He smiled. Your secret's safe. Dinner arrived, pasta, warm bread, and 2 sodas. They ate quietly at first, listening to the rain hammer against the window. Then Victoria closed her laptop. So, Ethan Brooks, tell me something I don't know about you. He hesitated. Like what? Anything. He thought for a moment. I wanted to be a photographer, travel the world, capture things people usually miss. What happened? Life, he said simply. She nodded, understanding more than he expected. They talked about childhood, about dreams, about fears. Ethan told her about Mia and how scared he was of messing things up as a dad. Victoria admitted she'd once wanted to open a bakery. A bakery? He laughed softly. Don't judge, she said, smiling. I wanted to make people happy. The storm outside raged on, but inside something quietly shifted. For the first time, they weren't boss and employee. They were just 2 lonely people, sitting on the same bed, finally being honest. Ethan woke to the soft hum of rain fading into a pale Chicago morning. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then he felt the warmth beside him. Victoria's head rested against his shoulder, her dark hair spilling across his chest, her hand curled lightly over his t-shirt. Sometime during the night, the invisible wall between them had quietly disappeared. Not in passion, not in recklessness, but in something far more dangerous. Comfort. Ethan's heart pounded. Carefully, gently, he eased himself away, afraid that if she woke like this, everything they had shared the night before would shatter under daylight. He slipped into the bathroom and stared at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes looked tired and conflicted. What are you doing, Ethan? He thought. She's your boss. And Mia needs stability, not complications. The shower couldn't wash away the storm inside his chest. When he stepped back out, Victoria was already dressed, hair pulled back, makeup flawless. The formidable CEO had returned. Flights are back on, she said, not meeting his eyes. We can make the 11 o'clock if we hurry. Right, he replied. I'll grab my things. The ride to the airport felt colder than the night before. Their conversation stayed safe and professional, like a fragile truce. At the gate, Victoria finally spoke again. Ethan, about last night. We don't have to talk about it, he said quickly. We were stuck in a weird situation. It happens. Her eyes searched his. Is that really what you think? I think. He hesitated. I think it was complicated. She nodded slowly. Yes, it was. The boarding call interrupted them. They took separate seats on the plane, as if distance could undo what had already been felt. Back in New York, reality rushed in like a tide. Ethan picked up Mia from Mrs. Thompson's apartment. She launched herself into his arms, wrapping him in a hug so fierce it made his eyes burn. Did you win your work battle? She asked seriously. He smiled. We'll see, kiddo. Work resumed, emails, meetings, deadlines. Victoria was once again all sharp edges and authority, giving no sign that Chicago had ever happened. A week later, Ethan was called into HR. He got the promotion. Higher pay, better hours, a future that finally felt secure for Mia. That evening, he found a small note on his desk in Victoria's handwriting. Well deserved. Nothing more. Days turned into weeks. Summer crept in. Mia finished kindergarten. Life settled into a routine that felt safe, but lonely. Then came the company picnic. Ethan almost didn't go. Crowds still felt strange without Emily. But Mia begged. So they went. The park was full of laughter and music. Mia ran toward the bounce house, dragging Ethan behind her. And that's when Victoria appeared. Casual, relaxed, holding a plate of watermelon. Ethan, she said softly, you came. He swallowed. Yeah, this is Mia. Mia looked up at Victoria with curious eyes. Are you my daddy's boss? Victoria crouched down, smiling. Sometimes, but today, I'm just here to have fun. Mia considered that, then held up her face paint brush. You should get a butterfly. And Victoria Hale, powerful, intimidating, untouchable, sat down and let a 6-year-old draw on her cheek. Ethan watched, something warm blooming in his chest. For the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, this story wasn't over yet. The summer breeze drifted through Central Park as laughter and music filled the air. But inside Ethan's chest, everything felt strangely quiet. Mia was already running toward the bounce house, her face still painted like a tiger, her joy loud and fearless. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to Victoria. The green butterfly Lily had painted on her cheek was still there, slightly smudged, but somehow it made her look softer, more real. She's incredible, Victoria said, watching Mia. You've done an amazing job, Ethan. Most days, he replied. Some days I'm just guessing and hoping I don't mess things up. Victoria smiled. That's what caring looks like. For a moment, the world felt suspended. Two adults sitting on a picnic blanket while a child laughed in the distance. It felt dangerously close to something that resembled a family. Then reality crept back in. I've been meaning to talk to you, Victoria said carefully. I'm moving to the executive floor next month. Ethan blinked. That's big. Congratulations. It is. New department, new responsibilities. She hesitated. And a new reporting structure. The meaning hung in the air. You wouldn't be my boss anymore, he said quietly. No, she confirmed. They didn't say anything else, but the shift was undeniable. Something had changed. In the weeks that followed, Ethan's promotion brought stability. Mia started a better school. They moved into a brighter apartment. He should have felt complete. But at work, Victoria felt farther away than ever. They were polite, professional, careful. Yet every time their eyes met across a conference room, something unspoken flickered between them. Late one evening, Ethan stayed behind to finish a campaign. Victoria walked past his desk, hesitated, then stopped. You still here? She asked. Always, he said with a tired smile. She leaned against the desk. I miss talking to you, like we did in Chicago. He looked up. Me too. A silence stretched between them, soft, heavy, full of things neither dared to say. Outside, the city glowed. Inside, two hearts stood on the edge of something fragile and brave, and neither of them knew which way they would fall. The late summer air was warm and golden, the kind of afternoon that made everything feel softer than it really was. Ethan and Mia were walking home from the park, her small hand tucked into his when his phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. I just got promoted. Executive floor. New department. He stopped walking. Mia looked up. Daddy? He smiled. It's nothing, sweetheart. Just good news from work. But it wasn't just good news. It was a door opening. That weekend, Victoria invited them both to a small charity event Hale Dynamics was hosting near the river. Nothing formal, she'd said. Just food trucks, music, and families. Ethan almost said no. Mixing his private life with work still made him uneasy. But Mia's excitement decided for him. "Can I wear my sparkly shoes?" she asked, bouncing. "You always wear your sparkly shoes," he laughed. When they arrived, the evening was glowing with string lights and laughter. Victoria spotted them from across the lawn and walked over, not in a tailored suit this time, but in a soft blue dress that moved gently with the breeze. Mia stared at her. "You're really pretty." Victoria blinked, caught off guard, then smiled. "Thank you, I like your shoes." Mia grinned proudly and immediately grabbed Victoria's hand. "Come see the balloons." Ethan watched in amazement as his shy little girl pulled one of the most powerful women in Manhattan toward a cluster of glowing lanterns. They spent the evening together, eating messy tacos, laughing at street performers, and sharing stories. Victoria knelt beside Mia to help her tie a ribbon, her voice gentle and patient in a way Ethan had never seen. "You're good with her," he said quietly. "I like her," Victoria replied. "She's honest, brave, and stubborn," Ethan added. "Like her dad," Victoria teased softly. As Mia ran off to join other kids, Victoria turned serious. "I grew up in houses that felt empty. No laughter, no warmth. Watching you two," she paused. "It's beautiful." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "It's everything." When the night ended, Mia fell asleep in the back seat, her sparkly shoes dangling. Victoria walked them to the car. "I don't want to pretend anymore," she said quietly. "Chicago, the park, tonight, it all means something to me." Ethan looked at Mia, then back at Victoria. "It does to me too. I'm just scared." "So am I," she admitted. "But maybe some things are worth the risk." Under the soft city lights, two guarded hearts finally stood close enough to see each other clearly. And neither of them wanted to look away. The city felt quieter that night, not because the traffic had stopped or the lights had dimmed, but because something inside Ethan had finally slowed down enough to think. Mia was asleep in the back seat, her small chest rising and falling in a peaceful, steady rhythm. Her sparkly shoes were crooked, one almost slipping off, and Ethan smiled at the sight. Everything he did was for her, every sacrifice, every fear, every careful step. Victoria stood beside the car, the soft glow of the streetlight brushing her face in warm gold. She looked nothing like the intimidating CEO the world knew. Right now, she was just a woman standing on the edge of a choice. "I meant what I said," she told him quietly. "I don't want to pretend anymore." Ethan nodded slowly. "Neither do I. But you know what this means, right? Mia doesn't get second chances. If I let someone into her life, it has to be real." Victoria's eyes softened. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't understand that." He leaned against the car, running a hand through his hair. "I lost Emily so fast. One day we were planning her birthday. The next day, I was learning how to be a single dad. Ever since then, I've been terrified of letting myself feel anything that could be taken away again." "I know that fear," Victoria said. "I've spent my whole life building walls so no one could hurt me. But those walls also kept me alone." A gentle silence settled between them. Inside the car, Mia stirred slightly, murmuring something about pancakes. Ethan smiled again, that familiar ache in his chest. "She needs stability," he said. "She needs to feel safe." "And she deserves love," Victoria replied. "So do you." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. Not as his boss, not as a CEO, but as a woman who had sat on a tiny plastic chair so his daughter could paint a butterfly on her cheek. As someone who saw him, not just as an employee, but as a father and a man. "Are you sure," he asked, "about all of this?" Victoria took a small breath. "I'm not sure about anything, but I'm sure about how I feel when I'm with you and Mia. It feels right, warm, honest, like something I don't want to lose." That was the word that scared him the most. Lose. But maybe holding on was scarier than letting go. Slowly, Ethan opened the car door and carefully lifted Mia into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck in her sleep, trusting him completely. He looked back at Victoria. "If we do this," he said, "we do it slowly, carefully, with her first. Always." Victoria nodded. "I wouldn't want it any other way." They didn't kiss. Not yet. But as they stood there beneath the city lights, it felt like the beginning of something fragile and brave and deeply real. And now, let me ask you, if you were Ethan, would you take the risk? Would you open your heart again after losing everything once? Or would you stay safe and alone? If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional, heartwarming stories that remind us what really matters. Your support helps keep these stories alive.